Welcome to the Fractional Edge podcast, the ultimate podcast where we unlock the power of workforce planning and discuss the rapidly growing fractional executive staffing strategies to supercharge your business. Hello, it's the Fractional Edge here at Frac 2023. We are back, and now we have with us our next guest, James Young. So James, tell us a little bit who you are, what's your story, what's your fractional focus?
Sure. I'm James Young. I am from Plymouth, Michigan, which is in between Detroit and Ann Arbor. So I'm a Midwesterner by birth. I founded an organization called the Product Community.
Okay.
And so what the Product Community is it's a product development and learning community specifically for associations. And as part of our offerings, and really our value proposition is how do we embed product into a people-centered organizations who are trying to make impact and purpose.
Okay.
So the whole business model is built around community, things that associations do really well. How do we leverage the value we create and extend that to extend connection and not only getting the membership to extend over longer periods, but get younger professionals engaged.
Oh, definitely.
In associations.
Got to get that next generation in there.
Without a doubt. Yeah, it's a real weakness.
What's one of the examples that you could give of an association or nonprofit that you've worked with before?
I don't know if I can use a particular name.
Don't use a name. Give me a. Yeah.
So, worked with a medical association in Chicago.
Yeah.
And that association produced an enormous amount of stuff.
Okay.
And what the product community does is it leverages two things really well. One is it leverages people, and it's built off of cross-boundary collaboration. It's like we're all on the same team, and we all produce value. We all sit in on the value conversation, whether we're in the finance team, the technology team, whether we actually are in the learning team or membership or volunteer management. Anyone and everyone belongs to that extended learning community. Mm-hmm. The second thing is the stuff really reflects our understanding of who our customers are and the ongoing need for engagement with that customer because the world is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
And then the third lens is impact. How, in what ways do we as a medical association move the needle on patient care?
Yes.
So that's really the reason. So if you think of those three things, and then you take that robust community and you start to think creatively about, hey, we're creating all this stuff. How and what ways can we engage with our clients who were clinicians, doctors, nurses, the healthcare team?
Yeah.
And what we learn is, they want stuff, but what they really want is they want to learn at the bedside. Oh. They have a need to learn in motion. So they need resources. They don't know everything and their days are extremely busy, whether they're hospitalists or whether they're actually not primary care physicians, but physicians, at the bedside, whether they're in a research role, they kind of need this information to guide them in a very applied, rather quick manner. So the word product in and of itself is something associations have always done. Mm-hmm. What this concept does is it takes it and says, okay, how do we best know what clinicians need to help them solve the problems, to move the needle on medical patient outcomes over time.
And as a fractional executive, where is the immediate value and then the long-term value that you can bring to this community?
The immediate value is in understanding who our customers are and understanding what we produce. And it's really based off one word that combines those things, which is interdependence. If we understand who our customers are, understand what they want, we're not going to produce stuff to produce stuff. And stuff is like events and content and courses. And oftentimes we don't know exactly what people want. So there's like an intimacy gap. We know our clients less. We know them as like X's and Y's and ones and zeros. Mm-hmm. We don't actually know them as people. We get to know the volunteers, but we don't actually know the membership very well. So in the short run, it's kind of fostering confidence. In the long run, it's really moving needles on why we exist, which is not to educate clinicians. It's not to put on events. It's to move the needle on patient outcomes. And that's the key difference. So there is a short term and a long term. In the short run, when we implemented the product community at this association, is we created an interdisciplinary learning community to serve the members. So just the model no less than of us all kind of learning how do you develop products for a very active, insatiable market.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
an
really cool.
ever evolving market too, and ever
Very,
expanding on
This is
regulation
during
and
COVID too. I mean, it was really insane. So I think that the part of the design of the product community and why I wanted to take it out and go further with it was people do need that connection. And with connection comes focus, a shared focus. That we're all in this together. So you play a function. So there's 120 people in this association. So you're an accountant, you're in the accounting department. You're not involved in, value creation, but you are.
You are.
And
Because
so are the technologists, and so are the marketing people, don't think that they're part of the engine of creating cool stuff to help clinicians do their jobs better. Again, for the outcome, which is moving the needle on patient care.
And that patient care is, one of the reasons why people actually have good outcomes in patient care has a lot to do with the patient experience. So you say, you're an accounting person, that doesn't matter. It all matters.
Totally matters. It's a learning community.
Yeah.
That's the Association of the Future is actually a timeless entity, and it's a learning community. The timeless value proposition is always around connection. The Future Association is connection to impact.
That's amazing.
Connection to impact. That's the big difference.
So what are some of the key strategies or maybe best practices that help you consistently deliver good or positive results?
So when I say product community, we're talking about embedding the concept of product into a community. So to bring it back around to fractional, the word embeddedness and integration is really important. Doing that crisply with a unique value proposition is almost the real close twin to doing this work really well. So unique value proposition, something underscored by deep expertise and thoughtfulness, so that we're actually creating a community of intention, very similar to what we're doing here at Frac and Fractional Universe. I'm just learning about what the organizations are. Key strategies: community often drives shared purpose.
Okay.
You can't just say impose purpose.
No.
You can come out with a vision, understand that we have a problem in the space, but you don't really create impact unless there's actually some real skin in the game, some shared skin in the game. So that notion of shared purpose to me is a strategy or best practice. Other things that from my experiences that are working is value-based fixed pricing. So I know that I'm going right into a kind of like a real practical thing from that more global over time to demonstrate value. And I've learned a lot over the last, 18 hours. It seems like it's been longer because it's really been it's a lot.
Yeah.
And I have to really reflect when I get back is some of the more practical ways of pricing for value and pricing for impact, and associations aren't always really good at that.
What's the challenge?
They tend to do cost plus pricing. So they
Yes.
tend to base their pricing models off of kind of a traditional benefits membership model, which oftentimes is not the way. Benefits aren't the same as value.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I don't know if they have this in Minnesota, but in Michigan, we have AAA insurance. You have to pay for membership for this, and you're paying for a coupon book. Associations kind of have a residue of that. You pay for a discount on the event. You pay for a magazine you don't necessarily maybe want.
Yeah.
You're paying for access to a community. You're paying for networking. I think there's a new value proposition out there. And I think value-based pricing or subscriptions are things that associations should be thinking better about. But again, they have to demonstrate the value. And it needs to be crisp. Otherwise, the youth market
has to be understandable too. Applicable.
I think associations struggle with all things to all people.
Yeah.
And I think that's the opposite of creating great community is I believe in big tent with open sides without a doubt. But at the same time, how do you take that niche and apply it towards, shaping a movement, which is a little bit different language than you're going to hear in an association. Associations kind of get together and say, well, how is our profession doing, or how is our industry doing? as opposed to coming together and saying, well, what are the big meaty problems that we need to solve that we can bring in industry and not-for-profits and government entities and actually get into a real robust community model.
Interesting.
It shifts conversation a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's been a learning curve. How long have you been working on this?
There is a learning curve. There's a learning curve for me. A big part of my value proposition and what I'm learning while I'm here at Frac is trying to be better at being succinct in communicating the value proposition, because what I'm talking about, almost everyone in the association is going to recognize, but I'm using language that is new. So I'm using product, community.
Yeah.
People are going to recognize community, but they're always like, well, what do you mean by product?
Mm-hmm.
So I put that lower. I think you used the phrase white labeling earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just a way of, maybe the product is product community and the company's called something different. What I really want to do is create community. I'm going to replicate what I see here going on at Frac and bring in diverse voices, people with passion and interest, and people who want to get together to shape.
Yes.
Is where I see, how do we create the ideal, how does the product community like an ideal association in some ways, even though it's not a not-for-profit.
Well, and you're actually working in a space that's in many ways, in some ways is avant-garde, the healthcare space, but in many ways it's also a sloth.
It is. I don't think these associations can overturn pharma, which a lot of our funding comes from.
Yeah.
It can't overturn how doctors become specialists. But what it can do is it can bring together diverse voices, some of which are those the medical schools, the doctors, the healthcare team, which is very diverse. It's not just the physicians. Bring together government through a policy lens, advocacy. And if you bring all those voices together, and then you say, we have a moonshot, and that moonshot's 10 years out, that just changes how you're going to be spending your time about the value you create for who your customers are, how you create community. And when we talk about product community, we're talking about value creation.
Yeah.
And sustained value creation to keep us connected over time, because the problems aren't going to go.
No, problems are never going to go away. Just got to figure out how to solve them quicker.
I know that always.
So when you think you've probably got I would say specific challenge, but you probably hit a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I have,
as the fractional executive. So give me one, and how are you overcoming it?
Creating community in a fractional sense has cultural and strategic components.
Okay. And
those aren't typically things that you can snap a finger with. And I was struck by the panel that you were just on. I think one of your colleagues up there was saying, she didn't use the word fast, but demonstrating impact fast. So in a fast moving world, and again, just to use the example of this medical society I was working with, is you can't force healthcare outcomes that take a while. And there's a lot of moving forces, including complexity and pandemics that just kind of like plop into our laps. So what I would say, there's a couple of things just from my lens, the challenges as a fractional executive. Finding and owning a niche earlier and being able to succinctly communicate that, I feel is vital. I don't come from education, but I have a PhD. I got a PhD about 20 years ago. I'm getting old. And I speak like an academic, and I don't really know. I mean, I don't come from that. So learning to speak like the ideal customer, speak in plain language, even with these MDs, they're like, bring down the strategy speak. Appreciate your zeal, but what are you talking about? So that's like a key. I'm still working on that. Being succinct. Almost every conversation I have, and I don't think I've mentioned it in this conversation, but it's about outcomes, not outputs. And that draws people in when we want to talk less about satisfaction and more about impact. Mm-hmm. Satisfaction being like, well, I liked that, or I learned that. Okay, so like, how are we applying that to solve not just interesting problems, but hard to solve, tricky problems over time? Yeah, it does take this weird heterogeneous community and a lot of focus to get there.
I run into that with some of my clients, and a lot of times they kind of don't know what they really want. So some of the things that I work with to make them feel it is, okay, so what does it sound like? What does it look like? And what does it feel like? Because many times people, it's a harder question to answer, but it really starts to make them go, huh, so that is what outcome looks like, feels like, sounds like, as opposed to, I just need something to hold into my hand.
I love that. I heard you say that earlier, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a big part of this model. This is a empathy based model.
Yeah.
I know it's called product community, but ultimately what it's about um, who joins that association and what problems are they trying to solve. And they're not necessarily solving it for themselves, like self-knowledge as a physician. The ultimate aim of this 20,000 person organization, just using this one example, is a multiple millions of people. So if you start to think of then that empathy model that you just brought up, just the way I translate that, is much exactly more impactful. It's much more, you start to think differently about the value you create as a community.
Yeah.
I keep that community sustained.
Yeah. Sometimes there's been a lot of movement and maybe a little trend around empathetic leadership. And I don't think people understand it wholly.
No, I think they think it's a needed soft skill.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that. Right. That's unfortunate. I knew where you were going. I interrupted you. Sorry about
it's
that.
All good.
But it's
no, but that's why
bad.
It's like, I
totally
think empathy is the first thing we need to have, but really understanding what that means. And it's not just being nice,
it's
right?
Shared meaning.
Yeah.
Shared meaning. How do we understand each other enough in this really fast moving world? If we come together knowing that we have differences, but everyone has commonalities across what we're seeing in this crazy world with all this crazy stuff that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
That we can still be neighbors, and we can still be neighbors that help each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Just when you just reduce it down to that, there's more commonalities than you might.
We're
going to vote differently, and we have different perspectives on the all the big issues out there.
So when you think about the future of fractional executives and kind of how organizations are thinking about, the next generation joining the workforce and what's happening with just the shift with AI and the whole different changes that are happening here, how do you see fractional executives being that impact and value that we all know we can bring when organizations are doing their workforce planning?
I think it's about indispensability. Okay. I think it's about demonstrating value. I put this on LinkedIn today. It came into my mind. It's a phrase I've heard. I don't know who to attribute it to, but revenue is an outcome of great relationships.
Good point.
Don't want to give people the impression we're just about revenue. We're really about demonstrating value, demonstrating serial value in a way that I would say isn't hired labor, but is embedded in a way that creates meaning, and the outcomes are much more multifaceted. So even though I say revenue is an outcome of great relationships, really good revenue comes from healthy organizational structures. And I think I think we can get that. I think we can corner that piece in a way that a full-time staff employee in a staff, I think often lose sight of that. Yeah. So I think we bring this kind of fresh independence, a little neutrality, not a fly-by-night come in and solve problems, but that notion of embeddedness is huge. Relatedly, so being able to demonstrate impact, I think, takes time. When I say impact, that's kind of like a higher bar. The lower bar would be, like clicks and satisfaction. Impact's more, cultural or strategic in nature. I think we can bring that. I think that's something we can bring uniquely. And then the final thing would be, in the most positive light you can present it, predictable and repeatable value. I think we can get good at distilling, not over-promising, building relationships, communicating and offering and delivering on focused value. Mm-hmm. Again, back to embedded and integrated. If it's a poured on, I don't think that's what fractionals are about. Yeah. We don't pour it on a set of services, or we just don't do a function. So it really brings us full circle around to a lot of the issues you guys were talking about, because we're not there to change the culture. We're there to empower the culture.
Yes.
That's just a huge difference. So you can't attempt to take on that big overarching change, but you don't want to become a fractional in an organization in which the culture is broken.
Yeah.
To be honest, we're not serving the company. We're not serving ourselves or our client, our colleagues.
Yeah, fractionals by nature, we all understand the culture of an organization. We've been in organizations.
Absolutely.
Some of them have been small and agile. Some of them have been behemoths and overly prescribed. Exactly. And all of that kind of drives the culture. And a lot of times I feel these new owners, new CEOs, new founders, they came from that big company. That's the culture they know. But trying to build a startup or an agile component that, whether it's a community, whether it's a service, the idea is like, no, you got to be a little bit more nimble when you're on your own like this. And that's kind of where I think fractionals can come in and say, okay, we get where you came from, but that's not going to get you to market as fast as you want to get to market, or it's not going to get your mission out there as quickly as you want it to. So I love the fact that a lot of people who are coming up with great ideas and great products and great services are coming out of the big ones, but to take that culture with you to start your own business, it might not work. I'm not going to say it's not going to work. It's just that if
I agree.
Yeah, everybody's different, but I think that's where fractionals can come in and help to see something that you didn't think about. Oh, turn a rock over when somebody goes, I didn't even realize there was a rock there.
As a real positive catalyst. I think fractionalists really can play that role if there's going to be something that kind of ties us together all across all of our different skill sets and functions. It's that catalyzing force. And I'd like to see us kind of like tease that out and grow that, because we're all different. And what I'm seeking in my fairly early journey here is translating those patterns into a replicatable framework for my own work as I continue on my own journey. Because I could call it lots of different things, but again, I think fractional's different.
It's very different
in a real in the most positive way. It brings shared value to the forefront, and shared value to me creates focus, and that's where you creates action and outcomes. So
tell me a little bit about what did you like most about Frac 2023?
I'll say one word and I'll say two words. One is community, which I love. Community vibrancy. I authentically had 20, maybe 10 deep conversations. You just don't have that in your day-to-day work. I mean, like 15 or 20 minutes, just kind of like lean in, just kind of like connections of, hey, we're in this together. And just learning about each other, as not just as professionals, but as people. Because that's awesome.
It's about, honestly, you want to help your clients out, help yourself out through community, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's very community forward. So something that ties us together. There's a shared energy here.
Very much so.
That I'm 55.
You're young.
I've been to these things before, and it's just kind of like ho hum. There's something different here.
Something different.
Yeah, here. I could totally be cynical. And, I mean, there's an undying idealism in my worldview, but sometimes I'm kind of like, oh gosh, I'm not going to learn anything. I really learned a lot.
That's fantastic.
Community, more power to it. I'll be back next year.
Yay.
For sure.
So what's the one thing you want to leave us with? And then be sure you give us how to contact you.
I believe in learning communities. If there's something that is a through line through when I was a little boy into a young professional until now, it's how do we bring people together with intention, and how do we make impactful outcomes together? How do we leverage care? I think that's just really important.
And how do people find you?
productcommunity.us is my website. I write a weekly Substack. You can find from my website. So I have a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday. And my email is james@productcommunity.us.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, CEOs and founders, if you need this man, you now know where to find him. Thank you so much for being on the Fractional Edge. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're very good. You really.
Thank you for tuning in to the Fractional Edge. We hope you enjoyed our insightful discussions and feel inspired to unleash your competitive edge.
Remember to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with the latest episodes. You can also connect with our podcast guests to benefit from their expertise and explore collaboration opportunities by visiting our website, thefractionaledge.com. Join us next time as we continue to explore the power of workforce planning and fractional executives in today's competitive business landscape. Until then, take care and keep growing.